Please don't forget subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified of new daily videos.
My great-aunt, Brenda Neely, was eccentric. That's putting it mildly. She was the kind of person who lived off-grid before it was cool, convinced the internet was a government mind control scheme, and that humming a specific tune at sunrise warded off the gray folk. So when she passed away, leaving me her sprawling, isolated cabin in the foothills of the Appalachians, I wasn't surprised to find it less of a home and more of a museum of oddities. I decided to clean it out before selling it. No way was I living there permanently. It was too far from everything, too quiet, too Brenda. I asked my buddies, Gavin Salisbury and Jesse Roth, to help for a weekend. They thought it was hilarious. "Gray folk, huh, Eli kid? Maybe we'll find a tin-foil hat factory out here," Gavin had joked, slapping me on the back as we drove up the winding dirt road. The cabin itself was a relic. Dust motes danced in the sparse sunlight that pierced the grimy windows, illuminating taxidermied squirrels wearing tiny spectacles and shelves overflowing with arcane books and polished rocks. But one room stood out, a small, windowless chamber in the cabin's oldest wing. Brenda had kept it locked. She'd always warned us away, muttering about proper reverence and thin places. When I finally managed to pick the antique lock, Brenda didn't do modern security. The air inside was thick and stagnant. Dominating the room was an enormous, tarnished antique cheval mirror, its silvered surface cloudy with age. Facing it was a single, high-backed wooden chair. On a small, intricately carved table beside the chair, I found a leather-bound journal. Brenda's familiar, looping script filled the pages, chronicling decades of her peculiar observations and spiritual practices. One entry, dated years ago, caught my eye: the listening game. It described a ritual Brenda claimed her ancestors had performed. You had to sit in the chair, directly facing the mirror, in absolute total darkness. No moon, no artificial light. The journal stressed absolute silence. For exactly 15 minutes, you were to stare unblinkingly into the mirror's black surface, listening, not to sounds, but to the absence of sound. It promised whispers from the other side, and shapes in the dark that reflect what shouldn't be. The rules were clear: do not speak, do not move, do not look away. Breaking any of these, Brenda wrote in bold, shaky letters, would invite it to follow. It feeds on attention, and once given, it demands more. Gavin and Jesse left on Sunday evening, promising to come back next month. The cabin felt even emptier after they were gone, the silence heavier. That night, after a few beers, curiosity gnawed at me. Brenda's ramblings had always been harmless, right? What was the worst that could happen? A boring 15 minutes in the dark. I went into Brenda's room. I drew the heavy velvet curtains over the single, small window high on the wall. Even in a windowless room, there was a window because Brenda made sure the door was fully closed and settled into the uncomfortable wooden chair. The mirror was directly in front of me, a black void in the encroaching darkness. I pulled out my phone, set a timer for 15 minutes, and put it face down on the table. Darkness. Absolute, suffocating darkness. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. My eyes strained, trying to discern anything in the mirror. For the first few minutes, it was just dark. My own breathing was deafening. My heartbeat thrummed in my ears. But then, faint, almost imperceptible, I heard them. Whispers, like dry leaves skittering across a vast, empty floor. Not words, just sounds, just texture. And in the mirror, despite the blackness, I saw movement. Not shapes, not images, but a distortion of the void, like heat haze over asphalt, swirling and shifting. My skin crawled. It was just my mind playing tricks, my eyes seeing phantom light in the total absence of it, my ears inventing sounds in the overwhelming silence. But it felt so real. A sudden, intense chill wrapped around my shoulders, despite the cabin being stuffy. I couldn't take it anymore. After what felt like 10 minutes, I fumbled for my phone, squinted at its faint glow. I was at 9 minutes, 42 seconds, and bolted out of the room. I practically sprinted to my bedroom, heart pounding. My imagination was clearly overactive. But the next day, the unease lingered. I couldn't shake the whispers, the feeling of something just at the edge of my perception. I kept thinking about Brenda's warnings. What if? That night, I decided to try again. Just to prove it was nothing, I told myself. This time, I'd make it the full 15 minutes. I needed to understand what Brenda had been so obsessed with. I sat in the chair again, the darkness pressing in. my eyes fixed on the mirror. The whispers started earlier this time, clearer, like more voices joining a chorus. They weren't just textures now. They were almost words just beyond my understanding, like someone speaking in a dream. And the shapes in the mirror, they were more distinct. Not reflections of me, but dark forms, vaguely humanoid, swirling behind where my reflection should have been, like shadows dancing in a non-existent light. Then I felt it, a cold, damp breath on my neck, right behind my right ear. I froze, every muscle screaming to flinch, to turn, to scream. But Brenda's words echoed, "Do not speak. Do not move. Do not look away." My gaze was locked on the swirling black forms in the mirror. They seemed to solidify, to reach out, long, impossibly thin fingers against the blackness. A distinct voice, low and guttural, whispered, clear as day, directly into my ear. "You listened." Terror gripped me. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. The shapes in the mirror shifted, coalescing into something that looked like my face, but wrong, distorted, hollow-eyed. And then it smiled, a wide, predatory grin that stretched too far. I screamed, a primal, guttural scream that tore through the heavy silence of the room. My body convulsed, launching me out of the chair, away from the mirror. I stumbled backward, tripping over something unseen, sprawling on the floor. My eyes, no longer fixed on the mirror, darted wildly around the pitch-black room. I could still hear the whispers, now a cacophony, louder, closer, surrounding me. And that guttural voice, repeating, "You listened." Panic overriding everything, I scrambled out of the room, slamming the door shut and fumbling to lock it again. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped the old key. I left it there. I didn't care. I ran out of the cabin, gasping for breath into the blessed moonlight. I didn't stop until I was in my car, frantically trying to start it. I called Gavin and Jesse, my fingers fumbling with the touchscreen. No answer. I tried again, and again, just voicemail. I left frantic messages, rambling about Brenda, the cabin, the mirror, the whispers. I told them to come back now to help me. I barely slept that night, huddled in my car, constantly checking the cabin, half expecting to see shapes in the windows. They showed up late the next afternoon. I felt a wave of relief so intense it almost made me cry. "Eli, what the hell?" Gavin asked, looking tired. "Your messages were something." "Did you hear my messages?" I blurted, my voice still hoarse. "About Brenda's room, the game." Jesse shrugged. "Yeah, sounded like you finally lost it, dude. You seemed pretty worked up." But there was something off. Their eyes. Usually Gavin's were a warm hazel, Jesse's a bright blue. Now they seemed flat, darker, and their smiles didn't quite reach them. "We came as fast as we could," Gavin said, but his tone was devoid of the usual friendly concern. It was almost rehearsed. Jesse started humming a tune, a low, droning, repetitive tune. It was Brenda's sunrise hum. The one she said warded off the gray folk. But it wasn't coming from Jesse, not really. It was like it was coming from through him, just barely audible beneath his breath. "You guys okay?" I asked, a fresh wave of dread washing over me. "You seem different." Gavin stepped closer, his smile widening unnaturally. His eyes, those flat, dark eyes, fixed on mine. "Different?" he echoed, his voice just a shade too deep. "No, Eli, we've just been listening." And then Jesse's humming grew louder, a chorus of faint, dry whispers accompanying it, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. I'm still in the car, watching them approach the cabin. I don't know who they are, but they aren't Gavin and Jesse, and I don't know where it is going to lead them or what it wants them to do with me.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button to like it. And please do subscribe to support the channel.